At some point today, you're going to be too hot. And then, about 4 seconds later, cold air will hit your face, a button into a colder room. You won't think about it once. But for 99% of human history, that button didn't exist. When the heat came, there was nowhere to go. Every one of your ancestors lived through afternoons that would kill an unprepared person in just a few hours. There was no shade they hadn't walked to and no water they hadn't carried, just bare skin and sweat. So how did they survive it? The answer isn't that they were tougher, it's that we were built for this, and almost nothing else was. Let's start with what heat actually does. Your body runs at a very narrow temperature. Push your core up by a few degrees and you stop functioning properly. Push it toward 40 degrees Celsius and you can develop life-threatening heat stroke. Go even higher, around 41 degrees Celsius, and extreme heat can cause cellular damage, organ failure, and death. Cold gives you options. You can move around, build a fire, put on some clothes. Heat takes all these options away. Every solution to being too hot costs you either water or energy, and in real heat, you don't have much of it to spare. And here is the part that makes it worse. The dangerous part of heat isn't just temperature. It is the combination of temperature and humidity, because sweating only cools you if the sweat can evaporate. In dry air, your body can survive conditions that sound impossible. In humid air, a much lower temperature can be lethal because your body is working overtime to cool you down, but eventually, it can't keep up. So how does a mostly hairless animal from a hot continent handle that? It turns out we are not badly built for the heat at all. In fact, we're actually pretty well designed for it. Most mammals on Earth cool themselves by panting. Dogs do it, cats do it, and plenty of other mammals do it. Panting works, but it has a catch. It uses the same airway you need for breathing hard. So the moment an animal is running, the exact moment it is generating the most heat, its cooling system starts competing with its lungs. It's a brutal trade-off. Humans do not have that problem because we cool through our skin instead. We have somewhere in the range of 2 to 4 million sweat glands spread over the whole body, and when conditions are right, we can produce several liters of sweat per hour. That means we can keep cooling ourselves while breathing hard at the same time. And unlike most animals, we can keep doing both while we run. Losing our fur is part of the same system. Sweat only cools you if it evaporates off the skin, and a thick coat traps it. At some point in our evolution, our ancestors seem to have traded some of the insulation provided by fur for a much better way to dump heat. And the timing may line up with humans spending more time in hot and open environments. Standing upright helps too, in a way that is easy to miss. At midday, when the sun is directly overhead, a four-legged animal presents its entire back to it. A standing human presents mostly the head and shoulders. In the hottest hours of the day, when the sun is overhead, much less of your body is directly exposed to its heat. So we have the system. But the system alone does not keep you alive because sweating comes with a price, and the price is water. A person working hard in serious heat can lose well over a liter of water an hour. You cannot stockpile enough water. So every hour of sweating is an hour you're losing water, and the countdown ends at a water source you may have to walk to. So the real skill was never just surviving the heat. It was managing the trade-off between water, distance, and time. That is where the behavior comes in. The first rule is timing, which mattered the most. People living in genuinely hot regions across completely different continents figured out the same basic strategy. Do the hard work early, pick things back up later in the afternoon. In the worst hours of the day, do as little as physically possible. That is not laziness. Sitting still in shade during peak heat can reduce your water loss dramatically compared to walking in direct sunlight. The midday rest wasn't really a break from survival. It is one of the most effective survival techniques ever used, and versions of it survive in hot parts of the world to this day. The second rule is shade. Direct sun does not just warm the air around you. It delivers radiant heat straight onto your skin. Step into the shade, and that extra solar heat disappears almost instantly without costing you a drop of water. A rock overhang, a single tree, or even a piece of animal hide stretched between a couple of sticks. That last one matters because in open country there may be no natural shade at all, and a piece of hide raised on two poles could make a huge difference. It was simple and could give you a place to escape the worst of the sun. The third rule sounds a bit backwards. You cover yourself up. Bare skin might feel cooler for the first few minutes and then starts working against you because sun on skin heats you directly and dries your sweat before it has cooled anything. People living in the hottest deserts on Earth wear long, loose, layered, light-colored clothing that blocks direct sun while letting air move underneath, so the sweat can evaporate. And covering the head adds another layer of protection from direct sun. Then there's water itself. And the real trick wasn't just finding it, it was planning your life around it. You chose your routes based on where water was. You timed your journeys around it. Basically, water dictated where you could go and when you could go there. In the driest regions, people carried water in whatever containers would hold it, buried it in advance along routes they knew they would travel, and treated the location of every source as knowledge worth memorizing for life. And there's one more strategy that barely shows up in the archaeological record. Sometimes, you just do less. In extreme heat, the group that survives might simply be the one that decides, we're not going anywhere today. Now, here is the part that turns all of this from survival into an advantage. If you can keep moving in heat that forces everything else to stop, then heat is not your enemy anymore. It is a weapon. There is a hunting method documented in a number of hot climate societies called persistence hunting. Instead of trying to outrun an animal, the hunter keeps tracking and pursuing it at a sustainable pace. The animal may sprint away, stop to rest, and pant to cool itself. Then the hunter catches up and keeps the pressure on. In hot conditions, the animal can eventually struggle to get rid of its heat, turning the hunt into a battle of endurance rather than speed. But it's worth being honest. This was never how most people got their food. Persistence hunting was one strategy used in some places, and we still don't know how common it was. But that's what makes it so interesting. It works because of the panting problem. The animal might be faster, stronger, and better armed, but it loses anyway, because it cannot cool down while running and we can. None of this made heat safe. Infants and young children are more vulnerable to extreme heat because their bodies handle heat differently from adults, and they can't tell you when something is wrong. As we get older, the body also becomes less efficient at sweating. Anyone who was sick or injured, or simply couldn't make it to shade or water, was in real danger. Extreme heat didn't have to be dramatic to become deadly. Sometimes, it just had to keep going. Which brings us back to that button. Everything I have just described, the timing, the shade, the clothing, the route planning, the knowledge of every water source within 100 kilometers, all of it existed because there was no other option. They carried that knowledge in their heads, passed it down, and used it every day, and it worked well enough for humans to spread from Africa into almost every environment on Earth. You probably don't think about any of this. You don't know where the nearest natural water source is. You've probably never planned your day around avoiding the hottest part of the afternoon, and you've probably never had to stop and ask yourself whether a journey was actually safe to make. And you don't have to, not until the systems you normally rely on disappear, because underneath all of that, your body is still basically the same. You still have millions of sweat glands, you still have relatively little body hair, you're still remarkably well adapted to getting rid of heat. You just live in a world where you almost never have to think about it, and where you might not know what to do if you suddenly did.